Hello, today we are going to talk about how to use data to create visualizations in our projects, and we will use P5 2.0 and look at the difference between CSV, a JSON, and using an API or an API key. We'll also use Claude code to revamp. I started using a dataset called the World Happiness Report from 2024. The circles represent the happiness score called a ladder score. You can see the smallest circle, click on it to see what the country is, Afghanistan, and what the score is. The colors are related to the country's flag. Every country has a generosity number. If they're below a certain threshold, I gave it a frowny face. If they're above that threshold, I gave it a smiley face. So that's just a quick demo that I'm going to show y'all. So we can explore this if you'd like. I'll link it below. First step for this demo is to go to KAGGLE.com. You can use the data that I'm using in this demo, which I'll link below, or you can find your own. Here, you can see a bunch of data sets. You can scroll through and pick one. If you look here, you can see what type of file they're giving you. So it's a CSV. Some of them have images. A lot of them have CSVs. So that's where we're going to start. And what is a CSV? CSV is a comma separated value. So it's just the formatting of the data. If you come over here to the data that I found from 2024, you can read the context about what is this data. Some of the data sets, depending on who's putting it on Kaggle, are more descriptive. So you want to find one that's pretty descriptive of what's going on in the table below. This down here is the table with the countries. It's got regional indicator, the ladder score, upper whisker, lower whisker. If it's a page where they give you information, then you can come up here to read about the ladder score. It's the happiness score for each country based on responses to the central ladder question that asks respondents to think of a ladder with the best possible life for them being a 10 and the worst possible life being a 0. So that's how they're judging happiness. And then here you can see generosity is the residual of regressing the national average of responses to the question about donating money to charity on GDP per capita. That's their definition of generosity here. So here you can go to download here or download here. I'm going to download dataset as a zip, but you can also use the API, which we'll talk about. I will extract directly to my project folder, but I just want to show you what we're getting here. Okay, so we've got two files. One says updated, so you can view it in an Excel spreadsheet, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, we're going to start to make our project. So let's go into GitHub Desktop. This is a follow-up video to my other videos. If you don't know what this is, watch the setup video. Up in the current repository, you can click on that and then add, create new repo name, data demo 2, description. I'm going to choose the path 2026 X demos. I already made one practice demo, but I will save it here. Initialize with a README. I don't need to git ignore and create repo. I'm just going to go ahead and publish the repo and make it public so we can share it in class. Now that this project has been created, I can go over to my downloads folder. Instead of extracting in downloads, I'll just right click and extract all and put it in the new project. So we see the change is occurring in GitHub Desktop. And if we want to commit the change, CSV added, commit to, push origin, and open in VS Code. I am going to delete the updated one for now and just use the original. So let's take a look at this. A CSV is comma separated values. So here you can see a bunch of values separated by commas. It's just the structuring of the data. We're starting up top with a header. Most CSVs will have a header that describes each column, and you want to make sure you know how this is written because this is going to come back later in the code. So you just want to know that this exists, ladder score, and then here, these are the values. Finland, Western Europe, 7.741. So what I did prior to this video was I took this whole CSV and put it into Chat or Claude or whatever you want to use. And I told it to change it into a JSON file. So let's take a look at what does a JSON file look like. Create new file. So I'm calling it World Happiness 2024. Immediately you see this little icon shifts to squiggly brackets to represent the file format. Here is what it turned it into. If you are online and you're looking for data and you found data that you really like, but it's not a CSV, maybe it'll be a JSON. So JSON is JavaScript object notation. And object notation, this is just the formatting of the data here. So you see this bracket here indicating that you've got an array. And then this squiggly bracket here is an indicator that this is a little object, a little nugget of information. So you've got an array of objects. Each object has a different property, a property value. For this first object, we have country name, Finland, regional indicator, Western Europe, ladder score. This is the formatting of an object where you've got this colon here. At the end of the property value, you separate it from the next using a comma. So this is the same data as the CSV here, but it's a little bit easier to read. So you might prefer to use something like this. I'm going to make a folder called data. I'll put my files in that folder so I can keep everything organized. And we're going to start our project by creating a sketch.js file, style.css, and index.html. Let me go ahead and take that out of the data folder. We're going to use the P5.js library. So now that we know HTML and CSS a little bit, we can work with all three of them. So this demo, we're not really going to touch HTML and CSS very much. We're mostly going to focus on JavaScript. We are going to use P5 2.0. So if you come down here and you say, looking for new version, find P5 2.0 here, you can click on that. And it is going to take you to this here, beta.p5js.org. So that's where you need to be for the references. 2.0 references are going to look different from 1.0. Start coding. The index, sketch, and style. I typically copy from here and put it into VS Code because that takes me very little time. Look at the library and it's still on 1.11. We want to switch this library to 2.0. Click here and go 2.2.0 beta. Exit. And then check here again and it is now on P5 2.0. Control A and copy in VS Code. Paste that thing and save. Next is the sketch, which you can just write on your own or copy here, either way. And then style here, just got HTML and body. It's setting the margin to 0. And then canvas, its display mode is block. This is setting us up to use the P5 sketch as the background. I'm using / star / to add in a little comment. And here I want to put down in writing what I'm going to do step by step to make my life a little bit easier. So first, I want to get the first column in CSV and get the second column in CSV. So first column is the country name, and then the second column is the regional indicator. I want to get the third column, which is the ladder score. In code, numbers start at 0. So here we're not getting number 1 column, we're getting 0 column. We need column 0, and we need column 2 if we want this information. Back into the sketch, I'm going to say get 0 column and get 2 column, which is the ladder score. And this one is the country name. And remember, we capitalized the first word, but not the second word. Next thing I want to do is show text for each country name. And then I want to show a happiness score in my circle size. So the circle size should reflect the happiness score. Lastly, I'm going to use AI to make it cool. First step is getting the data. If you go back here to the 2.0 P5 references and search load, you can find here load table. It's going to be moved in the future, but it's currently here now, so we are going to use it. It reads the contents of a file and creates a P5 table object with its values. By default, the file is assumed to be comma-separated format. The table only looks for a header row if the header option is included. The function returns a promise and should be used in an async setup with await. See examples for uses. So we're pretty much just going to come down here, look at what it's doing, and follow along. Back in our code, we see that the first thing we have to do is create a variable called table, and it's already doing the thing, but it's using function preload, which is a former P5 function. We are not going to do that, so I'm going to press escape. And down here in setup, I'll say table equal, and following the example code here, I'll say await load table, and I'm just going to press tab so it auto populates the rest of it. So what am I missing? So here we've got a squiggly under await. And the reason why is because we didn't put async up here. And so I have Claude Code installed on my VS Code project, auto populating it. I'm just going to press that. We've got async function setup. This will load asynchronously now. And then we need await here. You need async and await, load table. This needs to be exactly the way you wrote it over here. So this is not a JSON, it's a CSV, but this is incorrect. So let's go back to P5 and look at the way it's being written. I'm just going to copy over from P5 and then change what I need to change here. It is in the data folder, not the asset folder. It's not called mammals CSV. It is called World Happiness Report 2024 with dashes. And it's got this comma here, and then it's got a header. If you go back to the reference, you can come down to syntax and read what each property means. We've got the file name, the separator, so it's a comma, header, callback, and error callback. Right? What do all those mean? So then you can come down here to the parameters and say header callback is a string header to indicate the table has a header row, for example. Some of these things we're not going to use, but if you need to know what things are, this is how you would do it. And so now we should be loading the table, and we could do console.log table just to see what happens if we log table, like what is this looking like? And then while we're here, go ahead and change the create canvas X and Y. Instead of 400 pixels, we'll change it to window width and window height to span the viewport width and viewport height. Save, go right click, open with Live Server, press F12 to see the console here. And we have an error, but we'll ignore it for a second. It is loading table. So here we see table, columns, country name, all the columns. So yay. So we can see our data. So good start. Next up, we want to get the first column or column 0. So here we'll say the first column is the countries and happiness. In the setup function, we'll say country equal table. So calling the table, and then use get column with a capital C. And we're going to get column 0 because it's the first column. To get column 2, the happiness is, I'm just going to press tab because it's auto-populating. Happiness equal table dot get column 2. So now we're saying, please get this column and that column so we can do something with it. This is called dot notation. All right, what do we want to do with the first column? We want to show text for each country name. Down here in function draw, we're going to say if table, if the data is loaded, I want to read through all of the rows in the selected columns. So create a for loop that reads through all the rows. For let I equal 0. If I is less than table row count, I plus plus. Table.get row count can be found in the reference. Down here at P5 table, get row count here, get column count, and a bunch of other things you could do with this. So if you click on get row count, returns the total number of rows in a table. So I want to read all of the country names. So I need to use the text function in P5. And it's auto-populating this, but I'll just type it out. So country with an I. So this is saying it's getting the country column. And in all of the rows in that column will be written out. I'll say text X and text Y, and then I'll create a variable called text X. I want it to be random width, and text Y will be random height. This is going to do some crazy things, so let's see what it does. So the text is going everywhere. Because of that, I am going to, outside of this, put no loop so that everything just stays still for this tutorial. Cool, so now I can read all of the country names. Now, next thing on my list to do is show the happiness score using circle size. Wherever there is text, there should be a circle. Here, I'm going to come down and say circle. The parameters for this are X, Y, and diameter. You can also use ellipse, but we'll stick with this. In the X, I want its X location to be the same as my text. So I'll say text X, text Y. And then the size should be related to the happiness, so how big the ladder score is here. So I've got happiness getting that column 2 here, and then here I'll just press that. All of the rows in the happiness column I am getting, and then it's multiplying it by 10 because it needs to scale it up. These numbers in the CSV are pretty tiny. If we've got a circle with the pixel of 7, you're going to have some very small circles. You can use a scaling number to scale everything up. Let's take this out first and see what this looks like. We've got a bunch of tiny little circles here. You can see that. So we'll say times scale and create a variable. Let scale equal, we could say 10, but if we want it to be dependent on the viewport width, we're going to say width times 0.01 and see, okay, what does that look like? The text is behind the circle, so we need to change where it is in code. So here we'll just take our text and put it underneath. For the circle, I want to do no stroke. So we're going to do the fill at 0 for text to make it black. The circle we can fill with 255 to make it white. Cool. So now we've got the names of the countries and their happiness here. I'm going to go back to adding a stroke on it so we can see the full outline of the circles. Ideally, we don't really want them overlapping. The text here is off center because it's starting the text on the left side. We need to change its alignment by saying text align center. And then we'll comment out no stroke on the circle. All right, I have a good start and I know what I want to do now. I am going to allow Claude Code to do some work for me. Here in your extensions, we've been using the extension Copilot in class, but I switched to using the Claude Code extension because it seems better. I use both depending on how much data I've used that in that particular day. But if you want to go ahead and get the Claude Code for VS Code extension, this is it. Or you can stick to Copilot. Here you'll see this icon. This is Claude Code, and this one up here is GitHub Copilot. I just use whatever I need. Go up here, click on these dots, go to View, go to Word Wrap, click on that. It's going to make your text wrap around. Here I've added a prompt. I am looking at this and thinking, what do I want to do with it? And so I wrote out a prompt that I want to start with. And this is the prompt. I said, please edit my code so that the color of the circle matches the locations of the country's flag using gradient color. Choose a stylistic font to make it look cool. Make sure none of the circles overlap, and they should be in a grid with the country starting at the upper left, going alphabetically from one country to the next, with one closest to Z at the bottom right. No outline on the circles. Give each circle a shadow and use sine and cosine to animate. Whenever I hover over a circle, I want to make it larger and center it on the screen so I can read both the country name and show the ladder score. When it moves to the center of the screen, it should use the lerp function to glide there. When I click, I was typing things out really quickly. Actually, only move to the center when I click and when I hover over a circle to make it darker, indicating that it's clickable. The background should be darker hue, so my circles pop out a little, but it should be a gradient as well. Make it so, because I've been watching a lot of Star Trek. I didn't put this into Claude. Instead, I put this into ChatGPT, and then I said, ChatGPT, make this text readable for Claude Code. This is what GPT rendered. Layout. Create a non-overlapping grid of circles. Sort countries alphabetically A to Z, so the first country is in the upper left, but more understandable for Claude Code. Circle styling, no outlines. Color, typography, background animation, use sine, cosine. So that's how I formatted it. Then I put it into plan mode and pasted that there. So we can go ahead and just do it again and see, is it going to render the same thing it did before? Okay, so that took a little while, but it says accept this plan. Normally, I review everything just to make sure it is what I want it to be, but in this case, I'm not going to, just to save time. I'm going to say yes and auto accept changes. So we'll just see what it looks like. Okay, it looks like it's done. You can see here, it created a flag colors object array. Let's just go ahead and see what it looks like. It was pretty similar to what I had before. It didn't keep the scaling, so I would have to go in and make some more edits. Keep the difference in circle size in the grid before I click on it. I think I did that last time too. Basically some minor tweaks here and there, but you can get somewhere pretty fast using this and then make changes yourself. If you look over to the right side here, I'm scrolling through the code and you can see Claude added a bunch of lines. I'm vibe coding right now because I'm not going to check everything. I would continue making edits and then go back into the code and tweak some things if I had to do it manually. But Claude code is so good now that you really don't even have to do that. I typically like to start with my own handmade source code and then edit with Claude from there. So that's my preference for right now, for whatever it's worth. And then if you don't want to do that, that's totally fine too. I do know how to read code, so I can come in and look at this line, for example, and not be totally mystified. I can go here and see this line and say this dot phase x equal math dot random. So it's calling the random function. Phase x, sine, cosine, ambient motion. Okay, so it's using pi. So moving x times 2. So it's moving x slowly in a wave form. And then phase y is doing the same thing for the y. So it'll move it like this a little bit. Amplitude is the amount of the movement. So if I come over here and maybe I want to change this to, like, let's try 5 and 5 and save. And now they're all sort of moving a little bit more than what they were before. Let's choose that 5 to like 100. Ooh, now we've got all sorts of stuff going on. So that's a good start. We can still pick on one. Next, let's look at how to use a JSON file with the exact same data. I just renamed my sketch to sketch 2 and created another file called sketch 1. I copied the original short code over here. In your index.html, you could just say sketch 1 or sketch 2. So in this case, I want to see sketch 1 now. And we are going to call our JSON data. So we just have to change a couple things. So instead of table, I'm going to say data because it's not a table anymore. Here, I'll change this to data. Paste things out. We still use await, and instead of load table, we say load JSON, all caps here. And then you just put the name of the JSON file. So over here, it's world happiness, capital H, 2024.json. We don't need these columns anymore, so I'm going to delete that. In our for loop, instead of table.getRowCount, we're going to change it to data.length. So read through all the data, all the objects in the array. The length is referencing the array. So data in my array, read through it. After you read the data, you want to read all of the countries. So we'll say let country, change that to country equal data I open close bracket, and it's auto doing it, country name. So we're saying data, go check all arrays and then country name within that array. So come back over to our JSON and just make sure that it's spelled exactly the same, and it is. It needs the quotes around it and end with a semicolon. Okay, so same thing for happiness, but this one we'll change it to ladder score. So we are grabbing the components of the object that is within the JSON array. So that's the thing that needs to be changed. Otherwise, I think we're pretty good. Here, down here, all we have to put is happiness. All right, let's go see if it looks the same. So we're getting an error saying P5, it looks like there was a problem loading your JSON file. So let's go see that the spelling is correct. Data equal. Oh, wait. I didn't put the folder. So here you just have to put data. That's the folder it's living within. Everything else should be the same. So let's go check to see if it'll load. And voila. Cool. So we are back to the original code before. We just changed it from accessing a CSV to now accessing a JSON. So it's just a little bit different here, but essentially the same. I'm going to create a new file called sketch.js and paste in this code that I wrote before I made this video just to play around. I added one more category, generosity, here. So down here, I've got this function I'm calling smiley face. So custom function with its a few parameters X, Y, and whether or not the smile is on or off. I built a mouth with an arc. And if the smile is on, then the arc is like this. If the smile is off, the arc is upside down. And then a couple of circles for eyes here. If generosity, if the number is less than 0.2, then show the smiley face as true, so smile up. If the generosity is less than that, then the smile will be false, so down. To get to this, I had ChatGPT make it smaller and in the corner of the circle. Then I added this equal generosity so people would know what the smiley face meant. That's how we got to this. And I knew that 0.2 value by reading the table on KAGGLE. Generosity, 0 is the lowest and 0.4 is the highest for each country. And so the middle of that is 0.2. And so that's how I came to that conditional statement. Okay, that was sort of long. So I'm going to save the API information for the next data video. So stay tuned for that.